Welcome to The Courage Effect. I'm Suzanne Weller, and this is a show about growth and unleashing what's possible. You will hear inspiring stories about what courage looks like, how we navigate what's getting in our way, and the opportunities that surface when we choose courage over comfort. Let's get started. Hi, everyone. Welcome to The Courage Effect. This is Suzanne, and I am honored and thrilled to have a dear friend and collaborator on the show with me today. She is Stacy Harris. I'm really grateful that we're having this conversation today because it is a challenging time for many reasons. We've had some massive things happen across the globe in these past few months and in the last week in the US. So a lot of people have been really uncertain about what's next, me included. There's a lot of emotion going on. I'm really glad that you are listening today. We're recording this in the time of a lot happening in this world and specifically in this country. We are looking at a lot of uncertainty on the road ahead. I know that makes a lot of us anxious. And the conversation today, Stacy and I really wanted to talk about, what's impacting people showing up not only as human beings, but also as leaders, people in organizations that are managing teams or bringing people along the journey with them. It is a hard time for us to manage our own emotions and to be able to do that in turn for others. So I hope that this show gives you some perspective and some support, regardless of where or when you're listening to it. Before I welcome Stacy into the conversation, let me give you a little bit of background about her. Stacy Harris is a visionary leadership coach and strategic advisor who unlocks pathways of growth and fulfillment for individuals and teams. She has over 20 years of experience in human resources and business strategy. She's renowned for her ability to drive impactful change, one of the reasons why I love her so much, since that is a shared passion of mine as well. She collaborates with a lot of various companies throughout the world, one of the largest being Microsoft, where she also spent quite a few years of her career. She works with dynamic entrepreneurs and community advocates to create lasting transformation. Hi, Stacy.
Hi, Suzanne. It's always such a great way to start the day.
I would agree with that. I've invited Stacy today because we are launching a leadership mastermind, which we'll talk a little bit about later on in the show. But we wanted to really talk about so many of the challenges that the leaders are facing that we work with. We're both leadership coaches, executive coaches, and speakers as well. And in so many of the various conversations that we are having right now, we are hearing about there's so many different things that go into this stew. It's a combination of experiencing layoffs, having to, look at the economics of their companies. How are they actually having to tighten the belt, and other companies that are actually expanding? So it's both sides of that coin. I would also then say that there's the challenges of showing up every day as an effective leader. How do you show up for your team? How do you get the results that you need? And how do you be there for yourself at the same time? Because it's not just about showing up for your team and your organization, but making sure that you're taking care of your own mental fitness. Through that lens, I've invited Stacy here to really talk about these challenges and some ideas for how we can support you in working through them. Stacy, I'm curious to hear from you when I say the challenges of leadership right now. What comes to mind?
Yeah, I think two things. The biggest that I'm hearing is culture and engagement. And on some level, they overlap, right? I think you can have an engaged workforce, but not have a firmly defined culture, right? Engagement could mean productivity. It could be connection. I think there's different layers to culture. But what I'm hearing on the ground with leaders that I'm working with, leaders are worried, right? They're like, how do I motivate my team? How do I make them feel like they are being heard and still, getting the job done that we're all tasked with doing? And especially for those that are in industries right now that are being impacted due to where the market is right now, right? In a recent speaking engagement, it was a very diverse audience from manufacturing, from finance, from tech. And depending on who you spoke with, there were varying degrees of quote unquote health, right, as far as the market was concerned. And so while folks in tech today, in the last quarter of 2024 are faced with some pretty big challenges when it comes to restructuring, budgets being cut. You've got other industries that are really, flourishing right now. And so how do you as a leader not get stuck with what's happening in your own industry? And I think that's where the diversification of connecting with other leaders, and especially cross industry, is really helpful. Not only to be able to get insight into how they lead their cultures or develop their cultures, but also getting an understanding of what's happening in their industries, the challenges that they're faced with, and how you can share, knowledge share through shared experiences on what's worked and what hasn't worked in the past. So.
I think you bring up such a good point, which is the idea of external insight, right? Because we get so caught up in our own universe, whether it's our team, whether it's our organization, or whether it's our industry. So having an additional perspective of what other people are going through so that we don't get either, we're not like in this bubble of either like everything's great, the rocket ship versus everything is horrible if it's doomsday. So having that balance, I think, is a really vital thing. The other thing that I've seen too is with remote work, obviously, like this is becoming more of a challenge because when you talk about engagement, what does engagement look like at these different organizations? Mm-hmm. I mean, one of the most, like one of the companies that I've been working with recently that has probably the strongest connective tissue is all remote. Mm-hmm. And it's really interesting to hear about what are the things that they're doing in their culture to really connect and to come together and anchor on their values and to make a big difference, as opposed to those that are in the office every day or a few days a week. I'm not sure if you're seeing the same thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And included in that are deskless workers, right? I had a lot of great conversations recently with leaders that are strategizing around how to communicate and engage effectively with the folks that are out in the field, literally in the field, right? And so in some cases, and they're not sitting at a desk, and email isn't their primary, or Slack, or Teams isn't their primary device or platform of communication. And so how do you stay connected with that workforce? And that's the other thing too, is getting insight into how other leaders are communicating with the various functions that they're leading, how they're doing that, and how you can take the insights from that and apply it to what it is that you're trying to achieve as a leader. There's a lot of buzz right now. There's an energy. Let's call it an energy around the return to office, right? And that is impacting culture. And so what appears to be just a policy of return to the office seems like it could be seen as just this standalone, well, it's a policy, and and it needs to be executed. But the ripple effect on the culture is huge on that. And so as a leader, is how do you take something that is being kind of well, in some cases mandated. Let's be very clear. Like, let's be honest about that, right? The word mandated has actually been used when it comes to communicating the RTO. And so, how do you as a leader take care of your organization when you're managing to the larger company policy? But then within that, you may have people that are deskless. You may have people that, for whatever reason, are able to remain remote. And so there are these layers, these really complex layers that come to leadership today that leaders weren't faced with 10 years ago, right? Pre-COVID, this really wasn't a conversation, and so what we're dealing with, and what leaders are dealing with on the fly, is we're building this plane as it flies, because as a society, we haven't really done this before. And I don't know that anyone's doing it really well. But it also means that we all have to learn from each other, I think, and that's the power of that connectivity with other leaders. But how do we learn from others, but also take what we've learned and share that as well?
Yeah, and I couldn't agree more. And also, you're making me think of, the additional change of AI, right? Like the role that AI has in our workplaces now, and how many jobs that's impacted, and just workflows in general, and hearing about how people are integrating it into their work, which can be incredibly disruptive, or it can be, in both positive and maybe, not so positive ways, depending on what side of that argument you're looking at it from. But I feel like right now it's a time of sort of doubling down on change and getting an idea of being okay with the uncertainty that is coming. That is so hard. That's hard on our best days, but right now I feel like it's additionally challenging.
Well, and the reality is, especially here in the US, and it's not exclusive to the US, obviously, but there are things that are happening at the national level,
Mhm.
right? And that are going to impact the economy. And no one knows for sure. There are plenty of people that claim to know exactly how it's all going to work and how it's all going to play out. And if they're correct, good for them. But the reality is that we don't know where things are going to be 6 months from now. And that's change is inevitable. Change is constant, and it's incredibly disruptive. But to your point at the top of the conversation is, how do we take care of ourselves in the midst of all of this change? And then obviously as leaders, take care of our organization. A lot of the concerning conversations I'm having right now is leaders are feeling burned out, and they really want to do not only right by the organization, but especially by their teams. And they've also got to take care of themselves. And so there's this tremendous weight that is sitting on their shoulders right now. And it can feel very isolating. But the reality is, or the good news is that the more you surround yourself with other people in a similar position, the more power you have in being able to be adaptive to the changes that come, because we're all trying to figure this out at the same time.
Yeah. Well, and let's talk a little bit about our mastermind, because that is a great transition into, as you're looking for additional support and perspective, how do you know that you're tapping into like-minded people that have a shared experience, but also have some differentiation, so that they're holding up the mirror for you in a way that is positive, and they're challenging your thinking at the same time in a safe space. So I'd love to hear from you as we're, launching Outside Insight. That's the name of our leadership mastermind, everybody, and we'll put information for that in the show notes. I'd love to hear from you why you think that this is an important step for the people that are willing to and able to make the investment.
Yeah, I think one of the many beautiful things about the work that we do with our clients is that we get diversity of industry. There's healthcare, there's finance, there's retail. But quite often, and I experience this in my own corporate career, is you're busy, right? And you tend to actually spend time with the folks that you work with or are in a similar industry who speak a similar language. But the biggest growth that I see for a leader almost immediately is when they start surrounding themselves with people outside, or other leaders outside of their industry. Like, tell me a little bit more about the challenges you're faced with. Oh, it turns out we've got a couple of shared experiences. Here's what's worked for me. Or I never really thought about it from that perspective, because we don't have that perspective in my particular industry. But now that I see it from, a different industry, it gives me a fresh perspective. And so that's one of those things that it's not instantaneous, but it's relatively quick when it comes to talking with and being connected with other leaders that are outside of your current purview. I love getting in the room with my speaking engagements. It's a very diverse audience, diverse industry audience. And I love that, because I want to be able to connect with others that are not in the world that I grew up in, right, in my professional or adult life. Academia, right? I grew up in tech, right? Academia is foreign to me, but there's a long history of great leaders in academia, and so for me, I gravitate towards folks that are in industries that I'm not a part of. And it turns out, regardless of the industry, we do actually have a lot of shared experiences. And so it's sharing those experiences, but also identifying the differences and perhaps looking at it from a different perspective to see how it can apply. Yeah.
Yeah. And I have to say, I think that some of the times when I've gotten the most unlocked in my life, into my career, have been when I've sought out external experiences. And that can be a hard thing to do, especially when you're stressed out, when you're feeling threatened, when you're in this place of wanting to double down on security, because then you want to go to the safe space. And the safe space isn't always with people that you don't know yet, or
Right.
maybe people with a different experience. So it is, I think, even more important. I mean, I know that we're talking about this in the broader scheme. I think it takes courage for people to recognize what they need, to look outside themselves, to challenge their thinking, and to make sure that they are doing it in a way that is positive for them. And that can be hard. That can be hard to question your beliefs, your thoughts. It can be hard for us to do that, but I do think it takes courage for us to seek out external ideas, perspectives to be able to grow. And that's one of the things that I love about the work that we do, is that it's not just about, I mean, that's what we're giving our clients as coaches, but then the power of then introducing them to other people so that they can just build on that additional insight.
Yeah, and to that, with the work that we do with our respective clients that we have individually, the easy or the shortest distance between A and Z is typically to stay within your current bubble, because it can feel very vulnerable to step outside of that. But we take confidentiality incredibly seriously, and creating a safe space for our clients and ultimately with program participants is the biggest growth will come from tapping into that vulnerability and being able to say, I don't know, right? And I would love the support that comes along with a safe space, for me to be able to actually share exactly what I'm going through and how I could potentially solve for it. Because when you isolate yourself even further, that's when it becomes even lonelier, right? And so I was talking with an auto industry executive a few weeks ago, and they said, I'm really lonely as the leader. I don't feel right now that there's anyone that I can share exactly what I'm feeling, what I'm trying to solve for, because I don't know where to go.
Mm.
And we had a fantastic conversation about that, and I certainly hope it was productive. But they aren't alone. It feels like they are, though. And it's easy to understand when they feel like that, if they don't feel like there's a safe space for them to turn to.
Yeah, so hard. Well, and I love talking about this through the lens of the courage effect, because I do feel like it's a matter of, it takes courage to say you're lonely, and it takes courage to actually step up and to do something about it. So who might you be able to reach out to if you are a leader that is feeling challenged right now, if you're struggling with a lot of the various tides that we are swept up in? How might you reach out to somebody? Who might that person be? And are there other programs that you might be able to tap into to be able to do it? Stacy and I are launching ours in January, but there are so many more. There's so many various people in your universe that you can learn from their knowledge and get their expertise and their perspective to grow, and to also find some calm as we go through all of the various things that we're going through. So with that, let's wrap up. I will, as I said before, put the information about our program. But Stacy, any final thoughts that you want to share with everybody as we wrap?
I am actually interested to hear the story. I love hearing stories. And so that's one of the many things that I love about the Courage Effect is the stories, the platform that you've created in order for people to share those stories. I would love to hear stories from leaders about how the diversification of their network has helped them grow. Because I think sharing those stories is an incredibly powerful tool for other leaders to find the courage to step outside of their current space or their current bubble, and do that reach out, regardless of whether it's through a formalized program or through their own organic network development. I encourage people to share them on a platform like this, through social media, or just letting other folks in their orbit share with them what has worked for them in the past and how they continue to grow as leaders moving forward.
Sharing
Yeah.
stories, so important. Stacy, thank you so much for being here with me today.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
everybody else, for listening. And please feel free to reach out. You can contact me via thecourageeffect.com. And we look forward to hopefully supporting you in your larger universe and your larger leadership. And we send you good thoughts as we wrap up the year and beyond. So take care, everybody. Stay courageous. The Courage Effect is brought to you by Weller Collaboration. If you're looking to enhance your leadership skills or get more comfortable with change, please reach out to us. Our team of coaches, advisors, and consultants would love to help you get out of your comfort zone, operate in a braver brain space, and achieve even more amazing results. More information about Weller Collaboration is available in the show notes. Please spread the word about the Courage Effect. Rate and review on your favorite podcast platform, and we would love for you to share with your colleagues, family, or anyone in your universe who could use a good dose of courage. If you have feedback or would like to apply to be a guest, please reach out to us via our website, thecourageeffect.com. Lanny Mathers is our producer. Dave Nelson composed our theme music. Alex Sandyforth is our administrative maven, and I'm your host, Suzanne Weller.